This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. The war in Ukraine reaches a truly critical stage. You can now travel to Thailand without insurance or the Thai pass. And the WHO warns that the poaching of wildlife threatens the very existence of all Cambodian wildlife. But first, more from our main story. The war in the Ukraine has reached a pivotal stage. Russia has thrown all it can to capture the city of Severodonetsk and to thrust deeper within the country. The Ukrainians battle hard to hold the huge military onslaught, and the price, if they fail, could change the very outcome of the war. Recent intel shows how serious this situation is for the defenders. What you're looking at is a military map of the Ukraine, and it's a far cry from what it was over 100 days ago when the invasion began. To the centre of the country heading north is where Kiev is. All the troops are gone, and also in the northeast region there are no further Russian troops. All the fighting now is in the east. What we need to do is to zoom in to see the critical fighting that's going on around the town of Severodonetsk, which is at the centre of your screen. The shaded red areas are territory held by the Russian army. And taking a closer look, we see that they have the 2nd Motorised Brigade as well as the 4th Tank Battalion, looking to push further. But in response, the Ukrainians have their 17th Tank Brigade ready to repel any assault. And zooming in, we see the actual city of Severodonetsk. Now notice, on the right-hand side of the screen there, that is half of the city that has been captured by the Russians. The other half is still in Ukrainian hands. But what is more interesting is this line here of defensive positions, those blue boxes. These are all different groupings of troops. And directly in front of them and in front of the Russians is the river itself, the Donetsk. And that is a fantastic line to fortify your troops behind, to hold a defensive position. What we need to do is to zoom back out so we can get a clearer view of this titanic struggle. The entire Russian army is focused on taking Severodonetsk, but there's another couple of layers to this story. The Donetsk River itself is a wonderful fortifying line for the Ukrainian forces, and we can see them all lined up there. The Russian problem is they have to get to that river as quickly as possible, but then they have to ford it. And getting across rivers with tanks and APCs and military personnel is an incredibly difficult task. So one would think that the Ukrainians are in a very strong position, and they certainly are there. But look behind that defensive line. And what you'll see are those red shaded zones at the top and the base, and they are trying to close together. And if they do so, they will create a pocket and trap all those Ukrainian forces within it. It's hard to overemphasize as to how critical this battle is. And the commanders on both sides will have a single word in their heads. And that word will be Stalingrad. Because it was back in the Second World War that the Russians created a pocket and closed in around Hitler's 6th Army. And in doing so, they fundamentally won the war for Russia and were able to advance then on Germany itself. It is in fact been noted by many a military historian that that pocket was the beginning of the end of the Second World War. The Ukrainians will be in absolute fear of that happening to them. And if it does, It will be a monumental defeat and a monumental win for the Russians. It is the pivotal point of the war at this moment. Absolutely everything is on Severodonetsk. And it is on these guys that this absolutely critical battle may well hinge. The artillery. If they can hold back the Russian advance towards the river of Donetsk and to stop them creating a pocket, the Ukrainians quite simply would have won a monumental victory. More good news on the travel front. Thailand, as of July the 1st, no longer requires you to have insurance or to apply for a Thai pass to enter the country. There is chaos within certain sectors of international travel, but this move makes travelling within the region that much easier. Thailand is the region's largest player in the tourism sector and is expected to stop the Thailand pass from July the 1st. The Thai embassy has told the Khmer Times. This means that visitors will not have to go through the process of registering online at the government's website with either a COVID-19 vaccination certificate or COVID-19 test results within the 72 hours of travel. And you will not have to go through the expense of purchasing travel insurance either. Most visitors to ASEAN countries travel on tourism packages that involve visiting multiple countries. These moves to remove the travel restrictions by Thailand are expected to boost the tourism sector of neighbouring countries, including Cambodia. Although tourist arrivals in the country have been going up every month for the past several months, the truth is, here in Cambodia, they are not increasing nearly as fast as expected. In 2019, before COVID-19, $4.9 billion was generated from tourism, accounting for over 32% of Cambodia's GDP. 6.5 million people arrived in 2019, but in 2020 and 2021, only 1.5 million tourists were registered. The arrival of foreign tourists in Cambodia for the first 4 months of this year did go up sharply to 230,000, but these numbers fall very short of what is needed, and many hope the relaxing of the Thai entry restrictions will give the industry a much-needed boost. About 2 years ago, a man sat alone in a hotel room. In front of him, a line of pills and a bottle of vodka. Every 15 minutes, he washed down yet another sedative. That man was me. I was severely mentally ill, and I could see no way out. But my bid to end it all failed. It can never be understated as to how all-consuming the pain and the loneliness one feels when suffering from bad mental health. And UNICEF recognises this and looks to help the youth of Cambodia, who may also be suffering. Deaths due to mental health issues are known as the silent killer, as 1 minute someone you know will be there, and the next they are gone. Many suffer for years and in the end are worn down by the relentless assault. The sufferer feels abandoned as it is impossible to explain to others the agony that you're going through. The perpetual torture of depression and having to face the world pretending that all is okay becomes too much. This issue is of grave concern to UNICEF, and they have launched a campaign to address help for the young. Their study found that 45% of adolescents surveyed had concerns during the pandemic, and 16% reported issues with anxiety and depression. The campaign will involve 3 months of sustained online activity, raising awareness. UNICEF said that researchers showed that the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated an already profound mental health crisis facing young people across the entire world. They said there was already a child mental health crisis, but the pandemic has certainly made that situation worse. UNICEF's State of the World report in 2021 found that more than 1 in 7 adolescents globally lives with a diagnosed mental disorder. UNICEF also found that 58% of secondary school students reported experiencing at least one mental health issue. There is often stigma and potential discrimination involving mental health, and it is very much hoped that this latest campaign will bring this silent killer from the shadows and make more people aware of how very serious this issue is. The assault on wildlife continues. A total of 50,000 hunting traps were removed from protected areas within Cambodia last year. But the problem is only getting worse, as over 61,000 snares have been removed across the country within the past year. And conservationists are getting concerned. Homemade guns and snares have been seized from poachers as part of the zero snaring campaign. And the issue is a serious one, and one that does immeasurable damage to wildlife, as it seems there is no creature that is not on the hunter's list. The Ministry of Environment spokesperson renewed his calls on Cambodians to stop consuming wild meat and other wildlife products. A senior technical manager at Conservation International said that the use of snares to capture wildlife in forests risks Cambodia's forests from quite literally becoming devoid of all wildlife. He said, "The only way that this can be stopped is if there is no demand for wildlife. The snaring crisis is disseminating Cambodia's wildlife indiscriminately. Everyone has a role to play in ensuring that there is zero snaring in protected areas, community forests and other natural habitats." The WWF County Director added, "This drastic loss in biodiversity leads to a reduction of the functioning of the forest ecosystem, as all animals play a key role in the ecosystem process. It is a grim reality that the countryside is littered with tens of thousands of snares that do not discriminate, and every day they continue to extinguish wildlife that is already living on the edge of existence." There is good news from the business sector as exports increased substantially during the first 5 months of this year. The kingdom's exports rose by a very impressive 34%. And these robust figures have quite a few analysts surprised. The increase in exports reflects the revival of production in the garment and non-garment sectors. Speaking at a graduation ceremony of more than 2,000 students this week, the PM said that Cambodia's exports have been on the rise since early this year. The country exported $9,400 million worth of goods in the January-May period, an incredible 34% rise increase compared with last year. Garment production of clothes, footwear and travel bags amounted cumulatively to $4,400 million, 47% of the total, and the US remains the biggest market for Cambodia's products during the same period, accounting for 58% of the $3,700 million in trade. The kingdom's imports also rose during the same period to $13,000 million, representing a 20% increase. There are currently 1,700 industrial factories within the country, with an investment value of over $15,000 million. In the first 5 months of this year, 67 new factories opened, but 19 did close. In a global economy that is struggling to fire on all cylinders due to high interest rates and war in Europe, these latest numbers are very encouraging for the kingdom's economy. And now it's time to look at our sports news. It was a hit and hope shot, said England's Matt Fitzpatrick, that helped him secure the US Open. The 27-year-old was congratulated by Rory McIlroy on the 18th as he became only the third Englishman in 52 years to win the sport's second oldest major. Fitzpatrick shot a 2-under 68 for a 6-under total to beat world number 1 Scotty Scheffler in a gripping battle that went all the way to the final hole. His win will be remembered for the incredible shot he played from a fairway bunker onto the 18th. Fitzpatrick launched a high cut at the green, the ball landing 20 feet beyond, and it then spun back to a couple of feet closer. It was this shot he later admitted had been a hit and hope, and that hope helped him secure his biggest ever win. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week. Planning something nice to do this weekend? Well, unless it's indoors, I would advise against it. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and all the way into next week, we have thunderstorms just then converting into rain. But the real story is at the head of this graphic. 90% humidity. That is humongous. It's been an incredibly uncomfortable week, and that's going to continue through till next week. This has been the Khmer Times News. You can contact myself at the studio by mailing us at ktnewsstudio@gmail.com. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next Saturday for your weekly roundup.